Hey, brother.
Hey, brother. Hey, so recently you were telling me about the AFI lists. America Film Institute has their list of like the top 100 movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They have like 13 lists of 100 on like each list, and I've been watching them for a long time. Out of every single list, I only have two movies left that I have
yeah.
not seen yet.
Wait, okay. How long you been doing it for?
Since oh gosh, like 23 years.
Since,
23 years.
yeah, what age did you start this at?
I was 11 years old, almost to the day, because so,
Yeah,
it was October, and they aired the American Film Institute 100 Most Heartpounding Movies. And
yeah.
I watched that live, and that was the first list that I went off of before trying to find all the other lists. So yeah, I've been doing this. I've been looking for movies since I was 11 years old. It's taken me 23 years,
To get
and I
through,
only have two
yeah,
left.
yeah. What are the two?
Uh, Newt Rockney, All American. It's a
Okay,
movie from 1940. And The Song of the South, which is on the greatest songs list. It has the song Zippity Doodah in it,
okay, yeah.
but it's not on Disney Plus, so I haven't gotten that one yet. So I can't. I'm looking for those two. Those are my last two, and then I will have seen everything on every single one of the lists.
Yeah, and the Newt Rockney one's the Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan's in it. Yeah, that's on the quotes list. When just what for the Gipper, it's like a
Yeah,
famous quote. They reference it in Airplane.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's it. Those are the two.
I was around when Ronald Reagan was president, and he would say that. Like, let's do one
When
more
just
for the
one for the
Gipper,
Gipper.
or what? He would, yeah,
Yeah,
he would throw that line in.
famous quote from a famous Reagan movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, what are the lists? Like, what are the different
Oh
lists?
gosh, there's a ton. So our sister actually made me like a book that like to organize all of them.
Yeah.
Um, but there's the 100 greatest movies of all time, which they ended up updating it at one point. So there's a 100 greatest movies of all time 10th anniversary edition. So they kind of changed the list. So I have that in here too.
Yeah.
Uh, there's the 100 most heart pounding movies, 100 love stories, 100 funniest movies, 100 inspirational movies.
Is Rudy in
Um,
there?
Rudy is in there.
Yes.
Yes, Rudy is in there.
Is
They have the
Miracle
top
in there?
25 film scores. What did you say?
Is Miracle in there? The inspirational movies?
No,
Kurt
Miracle's
Russell?
not in there.
That one's so good.
I mean, that is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
But that's, oh man, there's so many movies that I've discovered because they were on this list. Like, there are certain movies that you only ever see because they're the best of whatever, the best that director came up with. So it's like The Godfather, everybody's seen because it's Coppola's best.
Yeah.
And then I'd never seen The Black Stallion, but The Black Stallion's in the Inspirations movie
Yeah.
list. So I found it and I watched it, and it was a Coppola film, which took me by surprise. And it's really, really good.
Yeah. Mickey Rooney is in that movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, it kind of made me realize that like even the like sixth or seventh best movie of a great director, it's still better than like 95% of the stuff out there. You know, like Coppola
Yeah.
just does good work. Um, but yeah, like it is interesting because like it kind of shows. I kind of learned how to watch movies by going through this list. Because eventually I came to the realization that I enjoy the movie more if I know what year it came out. Just kind of understanding how things were at the time and like geopolitically if there was a war going on. Like in Casablanca, there's a scene where like some Germans start singing a German song, and then the French like sing over them and sing the French national anthem.
Mm.
And it's more powerful when you realize the movie was shot in 42. And a bunch of the people who were singing the French national anthem were actually people who were like caught in crossfire and survived, and they like volunteered in the film so that they could sing. And it's
Yeah.
like it doesn't hit the same way if you don't keep that in mind when you're watching it. Like, oh, this was 1942. Like, this was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Does it change the way you see things when like how they pull off a certain effect or how they pull out like
Yeah, yeah. It really kind of, um, I mean, with the 20s especially, because like with films that were in the 1920s, it was just people doing really dangerous stuff, you know, and like hoping that they didn't die. Um, but yeah, like you'll end up seeing something in like the 40s or 50s, and you're like, wait, hang on a second. Like I know how they would do that now, but like how did they do that? How'd they pull that off? Um, and like a movie like Rope, which is a Hitchcock film, he was trying to shoot the whole thing to make it look like it was done in one take, which more recently Birdman did, and it's really good in Birdman. It's really impressive, but Rope was in the 1940s, and they had film reels that were 10 minutes long. So every single 10 minutes, they had to find some way to like creatively cut where they can end the film reel and change the film reel out and then continue where they last left off to make it look like it was still one take.
yeah.
Um, and he like invented like certain wheels so that they could move the camera and move the furniture without making any sound, because otherwise the mics would pick it up. Like there were all
Yeah.
these different technological advancements that were made specifically so he could do this one gimmick in the 40s, where if you did it now, it wouldn't be anywhere near as impressive.
Yeah. Do you have this is such an interesting thing because it's like how many 11-year-olds are there that embark on a journey of I'm gonna watch all the like whatever American Film Institute says is the best American films ever made. I want to watch
Yeah,
through all those because me at 11, like I wouldn't want to watch Lawrence of Arabia or Doctor Zhivago.
yeah, yeah. But I think I watched those both when I was 11. I usually kind of credit Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid as the first movie I saw that kind of made me realize that there were great films out there that I needed to try and find. And it was like early on, like I was going through the list just because like whatever, it was summer and it was fun. But then like I saw Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and I was like, this film is perfect.
Yeah,
Um, and I think we rented Casablanca the same weekend. We were renting them from the library because you could rent for free.
yeah,
But we rented it the same weekend. So I saw Butch Cassidy, and then I saw Casablanca, and our dad said that I don't remember saying this, but he said that I after I finished Casablanca, I said, you know, I really liked Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but I think this was a better movie.
huh.
And he was surprised to hear me say that at 11. And he
Yeah,
was like, okay, like he might actually be like serious about this. He might actually be passionate about film. So like, yeah, Dad would try and watch as many of the movies with me as possible, so that when I started talking about movies, he actually knew what I was talking about, so we could have a conversation with each other.
yeah. Gosh, man, I watched Casablanca and I was like, what? I don't know. I didn't. I mean, I
It's a
don't
great
get
movie.
it. I don't get why everyone's so crazy about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's some of the older ones are hard for me. Like I saw Double Indemnity, which is an older
yeah,
one. It's kind of like that first film noir film.
right,
Um, and I was also like, I don't get it, you know. But I
yeah,
think if you're looking at it in the historical context, it's a lot more
yeah,
powerful. And Double Indemnity has it ends. I mean, it starts at the end. The guy's
yes,
walking into an office and he's doing a tape recorder and now telling the story.
right,
And then you'll have guys like Tarantino do this kind of stuff, and everyone like flips out, and it's like it was done a
yeah,
long time
yeah,
ago that they were like kind of playing with this stuff.
yeah, yeah. Well, that was Billy Wilder, and he was a German director, and he would film in Germany before he came over to, and became an American director.
Yeah.
And it was German Expressionism was like kind of a real big thing where they would have these big dark shadows, and like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is like kind of the historical context. Like that's the film that they always point to as like this is kind of the first real like example of German Expressionism, where they had all these sets that looked all odd and off-putting and outside of the realm of realism. So he was trying to make people feel a certain way with
Yeah.
the way that a film would look. Um, so like Billy Wilder would do noir, and Double Indemnity was kind of like the first film noir where there's just like a bunch of dark shadows to kind of like make you feel a certain way. Um, so yeah, it is. It does make it completely different when you look at it from a historical context. Because when I first saw Double Indemnity, I was like 11 or 12, and
Yeah.
I didn't really get it. And I was like, okay, like it was okay, whatever. But then I saw it again as an adult, and I
Yeah.
was like, you know what, this is actually a really, really good movie and very impressive. Um, and then also like you take into account censorship. The Hays Code started in like I guess it was initiated in 1930, but it didn't really take effect until 33, 34. So in the late 30s, early 40s, the writers would start to get real creative with how they could talk about more like raunchy subjects or like sexual subjects because they were censored. They weren't allowed to talk about it. And there's a lot of stuff that I missed when I was a kid where like I would watch a movie again later. Um, and I saw a movie, Meet John Doe, with Gary Cooper,
Yeah.
and he's explaining this dream that he had about this girl, and it's a perfectly innocent dream, but
Yeah.
like there's a lot of subtext to it, and it's just like very creatively explaining what would be a sex dream.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like okay, like the writing was very clever in the 40s. So I think that that's part of it. Like it can be very like if you don't know what you're walking into, like you're hoping for something more exciting. But then like if you're paying attention to the dialogue, it's actually really creative. That's what
Yeah.
I like about Casablanca. There's really creative dialogue in that.
Yeah. I know. I would agree with that. When did the Hays Code get lifted?
1960. Yeah.
1960.
Well, yeah. It was like 59. Like 60 was like the first year that you'd start to see movies that were more violent, more sexual, and that's the
Yeah.
year Psycho came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you notice like a ramp up, a slow ramp up in it, or did it happen fast?
It was kind of a slow ramp up. Um, it was kind of late 60s when you started to see stuff where it was just, blatant. They would start to do like grindhouse exploitation type films.
Yeah.
Uh, there was like these things, they were like shorts that, would just have naked people in them for no reason other than they could now, and they were called like nudies.
Yeah.
And like you'd see that in like the late 60s. So it kind of took like a decade for people to kind of be like, oh, okay, like we're not censored anymore. And then there were the grindhouse theaters in the 70s going into the 80s, where like people would go and see kind of B movies and like movies like that. Um, but yeah, like it started to kind of not get regulated, but it started to find its footing in the 70s. And I mean, there's some incredible movies in the 70s. But I feel like that was the best decade for film, was the 70s.
What was the 70s? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
It
think.
was, it was,
I mean, I got to go with the 80s.
yeah, I've
I
had
mean,
this debate before with someone
yeah.
else. Um, why 80s?
I think the 80s is the most entertaining decade
Okay.
where it's, like I can watch Taxi Driver and go, that's a great film. I don't ever want to watch it again. Like it makes me feel like I need to take a shower afterwards. You know?
Yeah.
Whereas like I can watch Back to the Future, which is a great film from the 80s, all the time, and it's
Yeah.
always fun and entertaining.
Yeah. That's true. I think you may have been the one to point it out to me that the 80s really kind of started to nail down demographics, where they would make a movie for specific groups of people and specific age groups.
Yeah.
So there were teen movies and there were kid movies and there were like movies that were just specified, where it's like if you wanted to watch an action movie, then you go and you watch a Stallone movie or a Schwarzenegger movie. Um, so that I understand that, I get that. Like there was this interesting phenomenon in the 70s, though, where all the people who started film studios in Hollywood, they started them up in like the 1920s when it started to actually get footing and they were able to sell them on a mass scale. And then all these people in the 70s, like 50 years later, were all getting old and they were going to retire and they were going to sell their film studios. But film had become such a big, like, mega industry that nobody could afford to buy any of the studios except for other mega corporations. So they were selling off studios to like these big corporations like Coca-Cola, who had no idea how to make a movie. So they were picking kids out of like fresh out of film school and saying like, well, you know more about making a movie than I do, so here's like $5 million, make a movie. And so they handpick these kids like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola, and so like the 70s, it was all indie, like it was large budget indie films is what they were, and it was all these like kids that with like fresh eyes that had never made a movie before but had millions of dollars to play with. And so we saw all this innovation and we saw all this like incredible like outsider perspective filmmaking, and you get stuff like The Godfather in '72, and you get like you get Jaws, and you get Star Wars. Like the '70s just had like some of the most incredible stuff because it was a revamp of the entire industry, you know.
Yeah. What year was The Graduate?
67.
Yeah. What about Rocky?
Rocky was 76.
Okay. Wow, that's weird. Hey, can you do that with a lot of movies? The year?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, well, because I think Taxi Driver came out the same year as Rocky. That was 76. And then when you said Back to the Future earlier, I was like, well, that's 85, but that's an easy one. Double Indemnity, I think, was 41.
Empire Strikes Back was 1980.
Yeah.
Was RoboCop 85 or 87?
Oh, that one I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. That's a good one.
Yeah. You know what's it's funny because when you're watching through like a decade, if you go early 80s, you'll get a lot of stuff that feels more 70s than 80s.
Yeah.
And like one of the best examples is like the 1990 live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. That's an 80s film that took place in 1990. But it is totally an 80s film. It has that feel to it.
Yeah. You can kind of see the bleed over, where there's almost like you'll watch a movie where there's that first movie that feels like a quintessential 90s movie, and it probably like 92, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, like you'll see that it is kind of interesting, specifically watching movies chronologically, for that reason. And I've done that with a number of movies, or like, you know, different studios or whatever the case. And me and my wife did that with the Disney movies. And we watched from Snow White, 1937, chronologically, all the way up to like whatever came out. Like Luca, I think, was like the film that came out most recently at that point.
Is Bambi number two? Number two Disney film to come out?
I think.
Or was it Pinocchio?
I think so. Or no, it was, I think the next one that they were trying to work on. But Bambi, it took them a while to actually finish. I think it might have been Pinocchio.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've gone through them. But yeah, I think Pinocchio was 1940. And then yeah, Snow White was 37. But it was really cool because like you'd actually see the progression of the studio. Where like the animation was great, and they do these really interesting, innovative techniques, and then you'd get to 1959, which was Sleeping Beauty, and it was gorgeous, and it was incredible looking, and every cell looked like an oil painting. And then I think after that was 101 Dalmatians, and that was the invention of the Xerox machine, and they like made Xerox copies so that they could have all the dogs.
Yeah.
And it was cool, and it was like, all right, cool, like, and it was kind of stylized to fit the Xerox machine. But then all the movies after that started using the Xerox machine. So like there was this really like crazy dip in quality where like everything looked like 101 Dalmatians or worse. After Sleeping Beauty, which
Yeah.
looked incredible, um, and like they would reuse old animations and just like paint something new over it, you know, like someone dancing
Yeah.
like from the Jungle Book, and then like, oh, they're dancing again, it's the same dance but it's Robin Hood. And it was like that all through the 70s and the 80s. And then Disney, I think, was going to declare bankruptcy, or it did declare bankruptcy, and all the artists needed to basically save the company. So what they did was they started like hand drawing the most beautiful stuff you've ever seen, and it was 89, The Little Mermaid, and then
Oh
like
yeah.
like 91, Beauty and the Beast, and like 94, Lion King. So like you saw all of a sudden 1989 into the 90s was just some of the most incredible stuff that you've ever seen, and it took them decades, and it took them like almost declaring bankruptcy before it's like, okay, yeah, we've been doing crap quality for 2 decades and we
Yeah.
need to get back to doing good quality again, and that's what saved them.
So Walt Disney died, and they got kind of lazy, and they were
Yeah.
cutting corners. Yeah. When The Little Mermaid came out, that was like a really big deal. Like
Yeah.
it was a huge deal. And then yeah, just Aladdin, you know,
Yeah.
like they
Yeah.
had some really good stuff all through that phase. Right when I was, I don't know, what was I, like 10? I think I was, no, I was 8 in 1990. So around that phase I was like still
Yeah.
young enough to enjoy it as a kid.
Yeah.
At least. Now I enjoy it as an adult, but
I was born in 90. Um, so
yeah.
I think I was old enough to see Lion King in theaters.
Wow.
It's like
Yeah.
4, something like that.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I saw Aladdin in theaters or not, but I think I wanted to,
Yeah.
because that was a cool one. What? How many
That
Disney
was
movies
fun.
are on the lists? The AFI lists.
Oh gosh, I couldn't tell you offhand.
Is Snow White on
But
there?
like Snow White's on there. Um, I'm sure like Beauty and the Beast, I think, is in the love stories.
Wow.
There's something from Lion King. I think it has like Circle of Life, I think, is one of the top 100
Oh,
songs.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like there's a bunch that are, at one point, like the top 100 songs has a bunch of Disney on it.
Yeah.
Um, and it has a bunch of stuff from like musicals and older movies where I'll be honest, some of them are not easy to get through.
Yeah.
And especially like some of the musicals from like the 50s,
Yeah.
they're like 2.5 hours long, because they have to make time for all these long, like lengthy performances. Um, but the song itself is actually really good. And that's something that I feel like the list really got right, is that like some of the songs I've heard and I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever, it's a good song.
Yeah.
But then I watch it in the movie and I'm like, oh, it's on the list because the song elevated this scene, it elevated this film.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy, like some of the stuff that I still learn, it kind of blows my mind. Like what I saw recently, there's a song on the list. It was from a movie called New York, New York. It's a Martin Scorsese film with Robert De Niro and Liza Minnelli. And New York, New York was the song from the movie. And I was like, oh, they sing Frank Sinatra's song.
Yeah.
And the movie came out in, I think, 77 or 78. And I looked it up afterward because I was like, why is this, like,
Yeah.
why is this such a big deal in this movie? Like, the whole movie's like leading up to this song. So it's an original song from the movie in 77, and Frank Sinatra didn't sing it until 1980.
Oh, Frank
Or he
Sinatra
or he
covered
didn't
it.
record it. Yeah, it's a cover of a Liza Minnelli song.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind. Like, I just assumed that because Frank Sinatra's been singing since the 50s, this movie
Yeah.
that came out in the late 70s covered Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. This
But
movie
yeah,
I've never heard of.
Yeah.
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 Incredible. What
Isn't
was
that crazy?
what was like the hardest movie? Do you remember the hardest movie to get through?
Oh, man. Okay. So, there's a bunch of, like, there's a list for musicals. There's a list that's, like, the top 100 songs. And so there's this movie called Oklahoma, and I was like, all right, let me just get through, one of these like 50s musicals. It's going to be like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
And so I'm struggling through this movie. It's not, and I don't hate musicals,
Yeah.
but man, this movie, I I hate this movie.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get through it, and like I finally finish it, and I look through all the lists, and it's not even on any of them. I just assumed it was on the list because I've heard of it so many times. That was probably the hardest one.
The one that you didn't get rewarded for. You couldn't even cross it off.
That's happened more than once. Because they'll remake movies, and like Anna Karenina is on the list. So I watched this Anna Karenina from the 1940s with Vivian Leigh, and after I finished it, I looked and I was like, oh, I'm looking for Anna Karenina from the 1930s with Greta Garbo.
Oh, yeah.
So I watched the wrong movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. As far as a movie that's actually on the list, it's hard to pinpoint. Like maybe Porgy and Bess, another musical. But it was like one of those musicals where like they're singing even the dialogue, like they're singing the talking parts.
Oh.
So that was a little hard to get through. I'm not real big on that.
What, like the whole movie is in sing-song?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. That wasn't easy.
That would have driven me nuts.
Yeah. But like overall, most of the movies are really good and really impressive, and it's really cool watching them, especially as an adult, where I'll still see stuff that catches me off guard or that impresses me. Like I saw like Stormy Weather, which I believe was 1940s. And toward the end, there's this dance routine with the Nicholas brothers, and you can find it on YouTube if you just look up like the Nicholas brothers, Stormy Weather, and they do this insane dance routine, and they start jumping over each other and like landing in the splits, and they're doing stuff that looks like you might break something, and it just looks effortless. I don't know, like some of those guys, like they just devoted their life to the art, and so like they make this incredible feat look very, very effortless and seamless.
Yeah. What how'd you get you had to, like, when you were younger, there's no way you were watching like rated R stuff. Right. So like what would happen there? Would you just like get to like a bottleneck where like now you're like, all right, I've gone through everything on this list that's like PG. I can't watch The Godfather because I'm 11 years old.
Right. Yeah. That's what happened. Well, yeah, I started with the Heartpounding list, and I watched all the ones that I was old enough to watch. I started when I was 11, so that was like a 2-year journey. And then 13, I was able to watch the PG-13 stuff, and I was like, all right. But yeah, those were gone, and all that was left were like the rated R movies. And at some point, we discovered that there were other lists. So I was only going off of the one list at first, and then we were like, oh wait, there's a greatest movies list and a funniest movies list. So that just like gave me more movies to open up on, and I started kind of looking up. What we actually started doing was they released the nominations list. So out of the 100 movies, there was 400 nominees. So like we actually looked and found the nominations list, and I was like too young to watch the rated R movies, so I was going through the nominations lists.
How many of those?
So I saw a lot of movies.
Yeah.
How many what?
How many
of the nomination lists?
Yeah.
I don't know if I didn't like keep up on them. Yeah. Like once I became old enough to watch the rated R movies.
Yeah, then you
like
I just over.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, if I were to pull them up now and try and go through and like, all right, what did I see and what didn't I see? Like I couldn't tell you how many would be left on those lists. But I mean, probably not a lot. Yeah. I've seen a lot of them.
I mean, I would assume though, like if you watch through one or two lists, you're going to be able to cross off like 25% of any other list, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of crossover. which helps. Uh, on time, like I couldn't tell you how many movies there are total, just because of the crossover. Like
Oh,
I would
yeah.
have to do like kind of a crazy deep dive in order to tell you. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot on like the inspirational movies lists. I feel like there were a ton on that weren't on any of the other lists.
Oh,
And kind of the same with the love story list, where it's just like, maybe it wasn't the best movie ever, but it was a great romance. And like maybe it wasn't, like the
yeah.
funniest movie ever, but like it was really inspirational. So like A Raisin in the Sun was on the inspirational movies list, but it wasn't on any of the other lists. And it's like, it's a great movie. But like
Yeah.
I could see how maybe you wouldn't consider it the best movie.
Which version though? Sidney Poitier?
Sidney Poitier, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Hmm. Yeah. It's really like an interesting kind of journey for a young person to go through, to be watching through
Yeah.
like these great movies, and then getting a sense of really history a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it just fascinated me early on, I guess, and I started kind of learning about film history because I noticed that it would elevate the film. Like the more I knew
Yeah.
about film history, the more I enjoyed the movies when I was watching them. Um, and I don't know. I mean, like at a young age, I always wanted to get into acting because like I loved the movies. And at some point, it occurred to me that I could probably write.
Yeah.
And so I started writing, and then like I ended up learning so much about film and filmmaking that I was like, I think I'd want to be a director, and I think that's where I kind of want to go. And so I started kind of like pushing my life into that direction where it's like,
Yeah.
this is what I want to be doing. Um, and I mean, I am doing. I've directed 4 movies,
Yeah. Yeah.
four,
All right.
yeah, four
Yeah.
films, yeah.
Gosh. It's like yeah, it's almost like an opposite direction, because I feel like most people would be like I would be like, I want to become a director, and then I'd find out like, oh no, oh no, that's really
All that it
difficult.
takes.
I think I'll
Yeah,
do this instead. And then at the end of the day, I end up being like, the
it's
guy holding the
yeah.
boom
Well,
mic.
yeah.
That's really,
Well, it is
that's
kind
really
of cool.
weird.
Like it is interesting because it's like it does take a lot, and it takes a lot of knowledge, and it takes a lot of whatever passion, hard work, whatever you want to say. Um, but it, I feel like I've been studying for it for decades because of this journey that I took with the lists, where I was going through all these movies. Like at some point, I stopped watching them and I started studying them, and I started analyzing them, and I started kind of figuring out like, you know, if not the technical aspects of things, at least the artistic and the emotional, where it's like, why is this making me feel a certain way, and like how did they do that? How did they make you like? How did they make the audience feel this way? Um, and so when I started directing, um, I already had an instinct of there needs to be purpose behind the shot, there needs to be purpose behind the angle, and there needs to be purpose behind what you say and how you say it. And I feel like a lot of people, maybe that's learning on the job kind of a thing, but it's like, no, I've been studying for this for decades. Like I just like just trust me on this, it's gonna work. So I don't know, it is kind of a weird journey to take.
Yeah. Are there are there any lists where you're like, this is the funniest movie? I don't think so. Do you ever do that?
Yeah, I mean, the funniest list does kind of feel that way, and I think I figured out why.
Okay.
um, they're not picking, at least I don't think, that they picked the funniest movies. I think that they picked the best movies that happen to be comedies. um,
Okay.
so they're picking films that had more to do with like uh, historical and cultural significance, and how often is it cited, how often is it spoofed,
Yeah.
how many people know about it, and like, was it a solid film? Like, was it a really good film, in spite of the fact that like maybe it was just kind of a goofball comedy? So like you won't see Dumb and Dumber on the list, and you won't see Tommy Boy on the list, and I think those are some of the funniest movies ever made. It's like number one is like Some Like a Hot, which is a great movie. But like I wouldn't call it the funniest movie. It's just a great movie that happens to be a comedy. So it's hard to pick, the funniest movie off of that list.
Where is Tootsie on the list?
Number 2.
Tootsie's number 2. Is number 3 Mrs. Doubtfire?
Oh,
because then we're looking at a theme over here, right?
Mrs. Doubtfire. Mrs. Doubtfire, I think, is actually in the top.
Is it in the
5.
top 10? Okay, so
I got the list right here. I'm gonna take a look.
There's a theme going on here that they seem to like. Yeah.
Oh no, Mrs. Doubtfire's on the list, but it's not in like the top 10 or anything.
Yeah.
No, number 3 is Dr. Strangelove.
Oh yeah. I would.
And again,
I would put It's a Mad Mad World as the number 1.
Yeah, and that's like number 40.
Hands down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Airplane.
It's on the list, but
Airplane would be in a top 5. For me, I would put Airplane probably at number 2, but.
Yeah.
I mean.
I think I'd probably switch it. I'd do Airplane and then It's a Mad World.
I would.
But yeah, Airplane's number 10.
Yeah, I mean, I give it to It's a Mad World. I think because it came first, I give it to it because it's an older film.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Airplane, I mean, Airplane really did
for a long time
change things. It spoofed. It was like a spoof movie.
It was a spoof movie, and then it started like spoof movies. Like people started doing spoof movies after that, and like I think Top Secret came out a couple years after Airplane, and then the Naked Gun came out. Yeah, which started out as a TV show.
I think it was a movie first, then it became a TV show.
Files from the Police Squad was the TV show. It came out first in the 80s, and then the movies came out in the 90s.
I think. I feel like I always do this. I thought the movie came out first, and then the TV show came out because of the movies.
No, I think it's the other way around. They started the show, and then they got canceled.
The show's worth watching.
The show is worth watching.
It's great, yeah.
They recycle some of the jokes in the movies.
They recycle it, yeah. There's this scene, I gotta say, where Leslie Nielsen's undercover as like a lounge singer, and there's this guy who's doing a ventriloquist act, and he's holding everyone up because no one wants to watch his ventriloquist act. So he's got a gun and he's holding everyone up. And Leslie Nielsen's like, "Hey, that's pretty good. Let me give you my card." And he punches the dummy first. and then he punches the guy. I don't know. I love stuff like that.
I love that genre, the like spoof genre. But yeah, I consider Airplane like the funniest movie. And I mean, before I was old enough to watch it, The General was my pick for the funniest movie.
Yeah.
And that was great.
Good stuff.
Buster Keaton.
Yeah. Chaplin's got some good stuff. Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, yeah. Chaplin's got good stuff. The General is Buster Keaton, and Chaplin, he did City Lights, which I think is one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah, agreed.
But I do think Buster Keaton was funnier than Chaplin.
I give it to City Lights as the better movie, but The General might be. I might consider that to be funnier. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming both are on the list. The funniest.
Yeah.
Are there any Stooges on there?
No.
No?
And that's what I mean, like it's, you're not going to see any Stooges. There's Marx Brothers stuff.
Duck Soup?
Duck Soup, is way up there on the list.
Is that the one where they're on the cruise ship? Or
that's the Night at the Opera, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
They make a lot of movies.
I know it's hard. Yeah, some of those are like hard to keep track of because there's a
lot.
Yeah, it's weird how we don't do that anymore. Really, I guess Kevin Smith does it. Kevin Smith maybe is the closest thing to having done that, where he has these reoccurring characters just in different situations throughout multiple movies.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you do like the comedy teams would have like series of films, and like Abbott and Costello. I've seen like 37 Abbott and Costello movies, and that's not an exaggeration.
Are they
So
shorts?
it's like
Or
no, like 37 features.
yeah.
And they made shorts too, but like, but like that's an immense number, and like I couldn't tell you one from the other because I've seen so many of them.
Yeah.
Like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and the Naughty 90s are the two that stick out to me, and like the rest of them are funny, but like they blur together because there's 37 of them or however many. But yeah, like they used to do that. Like there was a comedy team. Like, okay, let's make another Abbott and Costello movie.
Yeah.
They don't really do that anymore.
Yeah, why? Yeah, it's weird that they don't do that anymore. Like, it's weird that after Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which I'm assuming was a box office success, they didn't come out with another Indiana Jones movie in like another year or two. Because, like, why not just keep making Indiana Jones movies and churning them out?
Yeah, it is weird, kind of the attitude that they had about it, because they didn't really think about sequels really in the 70s, or the 80s, and then like when The Godfather Part 2 came out, it was kind of a big deal where they were like, what, like people are gonna feel like they've already seen The Godfather, what are they gonna watch it again for? So he called it Part 2, specifically so that you'd feel like you have to watch the first one before you watch the second one. And then I think that like Sylvester Stallone, when he was trying to get Rocky 3 made, they were like, "What? No! Like we're not gonna make a third one of these. Like that's insane." Yeah.
Who do you think you are, the Marx Brothers or something?
Yeah. It's weird because it's like the '80s and they're acting like it's absurd to have a trilogy, and it's like, we used to make like 30 of these. Like what are you talking about? It's absurd to have 3 of them. Like it's not that weird at all. But it is. They did kind of have a weird attitude.
How many do we have now? 9? 8?
The Rocky movies?
Yeah, if we're counting Creed in there.
8. Yeah, there's 8 that have Rocky in it, and then like there's Creed 3. I think Rocky's not in it.
There's 6 Rocky movies and there's 3 Creed movies.
Yeah. Yeah. He's almost as many Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, they do that with Jason Voorhees. Yeah, the horror franchises do that.
Yeah.
Which, the thing is, like, horror... the horror film fans are so hardcore that they're going to watch your 14th and 15th Jason movie, and it's like, and they shouldn't, are they just so craving horror that they're kind of, are they suckers? I don't want to call them suckers because they're not. They're like, they know their genre. Horror film fans know the genre. Like, I'm impressed with them, but
I think they would prefer that the film be good, and I think that they can tell when it's not, but it's like, it's still fun,
Yeah, they like what they enjoy about it is the killings, right?
The killings, like you get creative with it, and like it's kind of fun. It's like the Fast and the Furious movies, like. Like I like the 4th Fast and Furious. I think that's actually a really good movie.
Yeah.
And the other ones are still fun, but like I wouldn't call them great movies. But yeah, the Friday the 13th movies, like I watched all of them, and like I like horror, but I'm not like a horror guy. Yeah. So I just kind of felt like, oh man, I just sat through a lot of crap. Like I just did not.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I liked maybe 2 of them.
We watched through Leprechaun, the whole Leprechaun series. It's one of those things where, like, when I tell people that, like, I watched through all the Leprechaun series, half the people are like, oh, like, they sympathize with me, and the other half are like, great, right? And I'm like, no, it wasn't great. It was torture, almost, to be watching through these things.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. It's great when you see a good one,
Yeah. What's the
but
top horror film
oh,
of the horror list?
Psycho.
Exorcist? Psycho. Okay, that's a yeah. That's a
Yeah,
good pick.
The Exorcist is definitely up there.
Yeah.
But Psycho and then Jaws and then The Exorcist.
Psycho Jaws. That's yeah. I would. I can't disagree with that. I mean, that's not necessarily how I would rank them, but I can't
Yeah,
disagree with it. Just Shining would be up there for me.
The Shining is on the list. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird too because like it's sort of the same thing. They're like considered heart pounding
Yeah.
movies, is what the list is called. So it's like thrillers are on there. Like it's not just horror films. Like it's just anything that like makes you jump and feel like, or makes you anything that makes you feel tense.
So
You know,
Jurassic Park is on there.
Jurassic Park is on there.
Speed
North
with
by
Keanu
Northwest.
Reeves.
Speed with Keanu Reeves is on there.
No, is it?
It.
Speed is
sure,
on the
yeah.
Speed is on the list. You're kidding,
Speed's on this list, man.
dude.
It's yeah.
That's
It's
exciting.
number 99.
Oh my gosh, man! They got it right, dude. That is a
Yeah,
heart-pounding film.
Speed's yeah, it's great. Rocky's on here. You know.
Yeah, dude.
Got
North
Pulp
by
Fiction on
Northwest.
North by
North by
Northwest.
Northwest
yeah,
is a
North by
good.
Northwest.
It's a good film. I love the part where isn't it what is his name? Cary Cooper, Cary Grant.
Cary Grant.
Yeah, where Cary Grant, the guy gets stabbed in the back and he falls over, right into Cary Grant's arms. Who doesn't? Cary Grant didn't do it, and Cary Grant is grabbing the guy and the knife. And it looks like he's. It's so like. It's. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
It's silly, but it moves the plot along. So.
Yeah. Hitchcock loved doing that, and just kind of, you know, like they're always like victims of circumstance, and you know, I think The Man Who Knew Too Much was the same thing. Like this guy gets like stabbed in the back or something, and then goes up to Jimmy Stewart and like hands him a note, and then dies.
He's all writing it on Jimmy Stewart's back. Sign this.
Just writing it with blood.
Yeah. Yeah, I like. I'm assuming The Birds is on there. That Hitchcock has just got.
Yeah,
a whole
I think it's number
slew of
7
stuff on there. Yeah, The Birds has this really interesting shot. I don't think it's good, but it does. It does feel the way it feels. There's a shot where you see. It's Tippy Hepburn is looking out the window, and there's the guy. There's like the light or the fire, and then there's the gasoline.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it does like a freeze frame shot of
like
her just
still
being like
frames. Yeah.
like looking like, wait a second, this something's crazy's gonna happen, and I'm like kind of like, I don't think it like I reward him for trying it. I don't think it worked, but I'm like, that is exactly how it feels when something crazy is going to happen and your brain is trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And you just have that like almost like you're frozen like in time looking at this thing happening.
It didn't look right, but it felt the way it was supposed to.
Yes. Has it ever been done right?
That?
Has someone stolen that and then did it like more correct?
I think that he likely took it and tried to redo it. Because I mean, there's another shot in that movie that he took from an old horror film. There's when they see the guy who's got his eyes pecked out by the birds, and it like does a jump cut and then another jump cut, and it like does the close up into him. That's from the original Frankenstein, 1931. Oh. Mm-hmm. The first time we see Frankenstein, that's the cut. We see him, and then it like closes up, and then there's a close up of his face, and it's super unsettling.
Yeah.
And so he like probably saw that, like when when he was doing a silent film, and was like, oh my gosh, and like it just kind of stuck with him. So like he recreated it in The Birds, and like it still works. It's still unsettling.
How did they? There is certain things in some of the like black and white silent films that is so unsettling and so scary looking.
Yeah.
Why can't they do that anymore?
I
Like
don't know.
what is it that is it the black and white? Is it the type of film they were using or the lighting? Is it the angle and we just don't have the angle correct anymore because there's like some weird angle that's like psychologically we just feel like there's a predator above us at a certain angle?
I mean, it could be a little bit of everything, but I think that the black and white helps. I think that the fact that it's a silent film helps. Um, I mean, what I feel like is a really good example is the Phantom of the Opera, what the
Yeah.
1925 version with Lon Chaney.
Mhm.
And the first time we see his face, um, I mean, the angle is great, the shot's
Yeah.
great. There's so much anticipation, and then also silent film actors used to do what a modern day director might call mugging, which is they over exaggerate their facial expressions.
Yeah.
And so, like, you kind of say it now as like an insult because it's like, you want to be more subtle and you
Mhm.
want to be more realistic. But a silent film actor would kind of like, would emote because, like, there's no sound.
Yeah.
So it's like they're just trying to tell a story with their face and try and get a feeling across. So that scene, there's all this anticipation. His face is right up front of the camera, and then she's coming up behind him, and she pulls his mask off, and he like emotes, and you see
Yeah.
this crazy looking face, and it's one of the scariest things I've ever seen.
Yes. Yeah,
So I
agreed.
think it's like all of the above. It's
Yeah,
terrifying.
I was trying to do that in Are You Alone?
Okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I was trying to be overly like,
yeah.
I try and like emote a certain way. I yeah. I
I
think
think
I've
it's
tried
better.
yeah, I think I've tried to emote a certain way in all the stuff that I've done for you. Anytime I've like been able to act for you. I've always done like
Yeah,
it's like something I've tried to do something like interesting where I'm emoting a certain way or I'm holding a certain
yeah,
expression or yeah.
yeah. I do think that it adds something. I do think it's better. It's a there's a certain amount of suspension of disbelief that happens anytime you watch any movie.
Yeah.
Um, but like with certain movies, it almost makes it more enjoyable. It's almost why you enjoy a sci-fi movie more than like a hard-hitting drama, is because there's that suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
Like you're not going into the movie feeling like this is real, this is something that has happened to me, this is something that could happen to me.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you want to just watch Superman fly around, and there's like like you want to just enjoy the story, and like if you're worried about Lois Lane. You're not
Yeah.
worried about like, oh man, I hope that doesn't happen to me.
Yeah. There's like the escapism. Is Superman on the list? Christopher Reeve Superman.
I think it is. Yeah,
Yeah. It's on one
I'm
of the
pretty sure it
lists.
is. He's definitely on the heroes list. There's a top
Yeah.
50 heroes,
There's
top 50 villains.
Darth Vader
Darth Vader is like number two, I think. Number
on the
two
villains list.
behind Hannibal Lecter.
Oh, yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maleficent, probably.
she's
Or
on there. Yeah.
maybe the Wicked. Yeah. Uh,
Oh man, it's
gosh,
so
man,
cool that I just have this book right here that I can
that
just refer to.
that villains list. Yeah. Oh,
Oh, Darth Vader's number three. It's Hannibal Lecter and then Norman Bates.
yeah. It's like yeah. It's always yeah. It's always fun for me because anytime I see somebody with like they'll have like Luke Skywalker's like lightsaber tattooed or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm always like, yeah, I'd get like Darth Vader's.
yeah.
I'd have like Saruman's wand and
All the
I'd have
bad guys.
Voldemort's wand and all the bad guy
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I'd have all
Hannibal
that stuff.
Lecter's
Yeah.
skin mask.
What's this lotion? It's not. It's nothing. Just put it on. Shut up. Uh, yeah, I'd have all I'd have Megatron and
uh,
Transformers. There's this Fast and Furious and Transformers is a series that they just keep making more and more of.
yeah,
So it does happen today. Yeah, because I was
yeah.
saying that like they don't really do it, but I guess they do it. It's just in now it's the action films and
Yeah,
what they
yeah.
do it.
Well, I think, I think that it's the closest that you get to, the 37 Abbott and Costello films that you used to
Yeah,
get. It was like people who wanted to just go to the theater and they knew they were going to laugh when they went to the theater.
yeah,
So they go and watch an Abbott and Costello film, and I think it's the same thing. It's that suspension of disbelief. I just want to watch cars fighting each other because like I want to turn my brain off and have fun. Um, so we're still doing it. We're just doing it in a much more expensive way.
yeah,
Probably because there aren't a lot of writers now who are as witty as the writers from Abbott and Costello's day were. Um, but it is something kind of special when you see both happen, where it's like here's something that kind of satiates that need to watch something that's just entertaining and it's really funny and there's that suspension of disbelief and there's separation and also it's a really great film. And like when both of those things happen, then like
yeah,
you end up getting something like Star Wars where people are still talking about it,
yeah, yeah.
or Jurassic Park.
Yeah, Jurassic Park's great. Is Raising
Yeah.
Arizona on the comedies list?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Oh
it's
god.
on there.
Yeah, that I think that might be like in my top 5 best comedies of all time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I showed Raising Arizona and Dirty Work to
Oh,
my wife.
yeah, Dirty Work.
And both films she said that she could see how they've influenced my style of
Yeah.
writing. And I was like, I take that as a huge compliment. But like Raising Arizona and Dirty Work, and she's like, yeah, like it's meant as a compliment. I can see the influence. Like that's awesome. I was H.I. McDonough for Halloween last year.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It looked pretty good too.
Yeah. And you get the yeah. Did you have the tattoo?
No, we were gonna draw it on,
Yeah.
and then yeah, we ended up just passing on it. We couldn't find the right. We just couldn't do it.
What is that? That's like a race car logo, right?
Yeah,
Because everyone
it's
thinks
either
it's
like
Woody
a race car
Woodpecker.
logo, right? He
But
looks
it's
like
not
Woody
Woody
Woodpecker.
Woodpecker. But it's not Woody Woodpecker
No,
with the cigar. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I don't think he's like a cigarette brand or something like that. And I think he was used. I don't know. He's using a couple different things, and he looks basically exactly like Woody Woodpecker, but he's not Woody
Yeah.
Woodpecker.
Yeah.
He's someone else.
How sad are you going to be when you finish? You think? You think it's going to be a sad moment for you?
I think so, but like I think I've also kind of prepared. Like, I mean, when you make a film, when you make a feature length film, you're working on it for such a long time that like the first 2 days are like really exciting, and then it's immediately like, okay, now it's work, now it's a grind, now I just need to keep going until I'm done, and like toward the end you feel like I can't wait until I'm finished with this thing, and then when you finish it you're like kind of depressed, like you feel bad that it's over,
Yeah.
but like you have this achievement, and it's just like yeah, but now what? I think I'll probably feel like that when I watch the last two movies,
Yeah.
but I'm prepared for it though.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I think it's going to be a weird thing because it's something you've always kind of had where you were like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm sure you took breaks from it and then kind of like returned to it and was like, hey, there's all these
Yes.
other films I haven't seen that are on the list and I can watch them. I can cross this thing off. And then you're
Yeah.
going to get to a point where you can't do that anymore now for like
Yeah.
the first time in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it might end up turning into like there's some movies that maybe I want to rewatch because I was too young to appreciate them when I first saw them.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt that way. Some of the movies that I rewatched as an adult, like I saw The Third Man with Orson Welles as an adult,
Yeah.
and I was like, this movie's really freaking good. And like I could remember being bored by it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like maybe that's the next step is like if I go back to the list, then just going through and being like, well, I know I've seen it, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I don't really remember.
Yeah.
Time to watch it again.
Or you'll find the British Film Institute list
I
for
know.
movies. It's just the comedies are Hugh Grant Just all Hugh Grant.
Yeah, yeah. They're all the Carry On movies.
Yeah,
There's like 15 of those too. Um, I don't know. I mean, like the alternative though, which like maybe this is why I became a filmmaker, but like when you've seen everything out there, what you start feeling like is okay. Like it's my turn now. Like let me put something out there. Let me make something, and then other people will like maybe discover it, and maybe it's your thing, maybe it's not. But like you know, hopefully
yeah,
I can make it onto some future list. I think that'd be really cool.
yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah. Well, I think those were some good pages.
Right, yeah.
So until next time, I'll see you later, brother.
Later, brother.